Welcome back to the Two Pointers Podcast. I'm Trevor Everett, and I'm excited to talk draft chat again once today with friend of the show, as always, Stephen Gillaspie. First of all, how are you?
Man, Trevor, I'm doing awesome, man. It's finally it's great to get to do a show with you. I know that we've done some work together earlier in the season. We worked together prior draft classes, man. It's awesome just to see you. And I see you on Twitter all the time. You're always working, and I just love people who are passionate about what they do and being consistent with the work that they do. So I'm honored to be here with you, man.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I was going to do some crazy long drawn-out intro, but I'd rather you just let you do that for yourself. So for the listeners that might be new here, like you said, we've worked together before. Let people know where they can find you. Obviously, the main work at No Ceilings, of course, but also just in general, socials, things like that, and then we'll also do it at the end.
Yeah, for sure. So for anyone who wants to follow me, I'm most active on Twitter at Stephen. That's with a PH, so Stephen G Hoops. You can read my written work over at NoCeilingsNBA.com. The No Ceilings NBA feed on Twitter also posts my work and everybody else's work also, and we're constantly doing like interviews. We're making film, we're writing content. We try to be everywhere all at once, and I feel like we've done a pretty good job of that this season. But if anyone who wants to follow anything that I'm doing or the rest of the team, NoCeilingsNBA.com. We're at NoCeilingsNBA on all your socials.
That's a perfect segue. So I'll introduce this at the top. I'm also going to do like every other draft chat, be very clear that this is not going to be time-sensitive material because of the fact that I like to do these, schedule these out, plan them. By the time people are hearing this, it will be whatever 7 days from February 18th is. We're recording this right before the NBA All-Star festivities on Saturday night. Good segue with No Ceilings. My first question is completely satirical. You can laugh. You cannot answer it. I do not care. Nathan or Maxwell? I'm kidding.
Nathan or Maxwell? Oh, my goodness.
Don't make them do that. Don't make them do that. It's okay.
I'll answer you. I might not be back on No Ceilings, but we'll can't pick them. I'll pick both of them, and then I'll kick me out. How about that?
I've seen people debate the. I also wrote down Tyler as a joke because that's just hilarious that those two have done a show now for so long.
Well, I'll just say Tyler, and I'll win both ways.
You're saying that I told you before we started I had 10 of these, and I technically have 8 of them because I just gave you 2 stupid ones to just kind of get the juices flowing, to let people know that we're playing this or that. It's not to put feet to the fire for you and make you pick between 2 prospects. There are a few in there that I think are worth a conversation, but these are just 2, handful of good scenarios I want to talk through. And then at the end, as the title shows, we're going to talk. I can call it a deep dive, I guess. I don't really know what that's, no big title there, but we're going to talk about Jett Howard. He did win the Game Day Two Pointers Podcast vote the other day. It was up for a week. We'll talk about some other vote getters in there as well. But Jett Howard won, I would call it by a landslide. So we're going to talk this or that, and then we'll also do that at the end. So with Jett. All right,
yeah, that sounds good.
This or that. The first question I have for you, and some of this stuff's going to be preference, some of this stuff's going to be fun. I just want to see where you are on some of these things. If you are, and I gave you the scenario before we started for this one, if you are a GM and you are the only, it is your pick and you're between these 2 archetypes available, you can put names in your head if you'd like. If a stretch big is available or a combo guard's available, who are you taking, or who is your more draft philosophy fandom?
Oh man, this is good. I like both so much. I'm gonna go combo guard, especially in today's NBA, because I feel like combo guard used to be like taboo and it used to be something bad, but now it means you're versatile. Where a stretch big, if you're not hitting from 3, there's so much more to your game that you have to do. And I was actually listening to the Through the Wire podcast today, and I love those guys. But they were talking about how the classic big man, like the bruising one, your Jared Allen's, what have you, they're the ones that teams are looking for more so nowadays. Like obviously, like with a little bit more modernized twist, but these unicorn bigs, they're not succeeding as much as what was once believed to be the case to be true in the future. But combo guards, they're still very much in vogue.
I don't know if you would call Jett Howard one, but I was trying to tie it to the episode, and we'll talk about him. I don't know if I'd call him a combo guard, but maybe I don't know. I think there's some things to discuss about him in terms of
combo wing. Maybe?
Combo wing, yeah. I know he's technically bigger, and that's what we'll talk about. Yeah. Some of the intangibles there for him. In terms of stretch big, obviously, I know you mentioned some of this is just going to be, your opinion on how the NBA is shaped and changed. I know you mentioned the combo guard now. I think there's a value of a stretch big now, just because of I think it's just you're expected now to go five or four out or whatever, and have at least 4 people that can shoot a three. I do think there's still value in a stretch big. Like Jokic has never asked to do that. The guy who probably will win at least 2 MVPs we know, and maybe a third. But he's expected, if he is open and can make that three, he should take it. And that's kind of where I was like, I think he was a second rounder and stuff, but
I think Karl Anthony Towns is probably like the only real stretch big that like has like that star tagline. Like Joel Embiid can do it.
That's a good
Nikola
point.
Jokic can do it. But there
like
has to be more around the elbow and more around the block, more so now. And I think the less popular Joel Embiid was the more perimeter oriented one. And now that they got, James Harden and Maxey, he's operating closer to the basket now, and people actually kind of like him a little bit more.
I love that. I mentioned it in my contenders tiers article that went out Friday. As people are hearing this, I guess it would have been February 17th. But their pick and roll, I think Harden was like 88%. I might be really close on the stat. He was like 88% pick and rolls, including passes, points per possession. It was just which is nuts. That's top 12 in the league. I mean, the way their pick and roll offense has been this year, obviously, I'm excited to see how they expand outside of that as this, Sixers have flamed out the last couple of years in the second round. But I think it'll be really fun to watch how they change their game. And Embiid's not asked to do it, like you said. He can do it, but not asked to do it. So, fitting with the theme of types: elite shooter with no defense, elite defender with no shot.
Oh man, I would probably go elite shooter with no defense, but I mean, there's examples of both that were getting early stretches within their first couple seasons that ultimately ended up going to the bench. So I don't know. Actually, let me take that back. I'm gonna say defender with no shot, because I think it's easier to teach a jump shot than it is to teach someone to give a crap on defense. Bingo. So I'll go defender at first.
That's where I went with it. And then my follow-up question was, so for me, this class is fun because there's like these huge chunk of tiers for me. The first guy that came to my mind was elite defender with no shot was Dylan Mitchell. I don't know if you would agree or disagree with that, but who is the elite shooter with no defense that came to your mind on in terms of this year's class?
Elite shooter with no defense. Oh man,
because no defense is harsh, but like it's
Nigel Pack.
Oh, I got to see him the other day. That was I would completely agree with that. Even though I went to the Carolina and Miami game on Monday. Even though Carolina did nothing on offense, especially from three, Pack just anytime he was the primary defender, even though he had almost 30, it was hard to watch. I will say, at least Wong can keep his feet moving, but talking about those two guys together, but that's a good one. Nigel Pack, that's kind of like a pull down to the bottom.
Yeah, this is an out there one, because I feel like people would say Grady Dick, like just kind of lazily, but I think that he is actually a big hustle guy right now. And I can't think of anyone else who I would consider an elite defender that like doesn't try on defense. I can't really, off the top of my head, think of anybody that I look at as just like an absolute liability on the defensive end.
I like it. This one's a little bit fun, kind of pivoting away from kind of the archetyped questions. I couldn't think of as many that made sense to make you think, because I was like, oh well, you could have both. You have. It
doesn't take much to make me have to think, Trevor. Man, I'm from Arkansas, so I have to think a lot whenever I get asked a question.
It's all good. I'd rather you process it and answer it. That's the best part about it. That's the best part about doing these things. I can cut out all the thought and the silence. It's okay. 2 lifetime tickets to the NBA draft. We'll say somewhere, I would call it 100s in a stadium, but it's like the way they do it in the Barclays Center. I would say 2 decent seats to the NBA draft, or you get 1 year, media or fan, you get to sit in the green room.
I'm sorry, I'm confused on the question.
Okay, so you either get 2 scenario I give you is you either get 2 lifetime tickets as a fan, so you can go every year, you can hang out, do whatever, or you get 1 year where you get to be in the green room and be the guy interviewing.
Oh, I got you.
So it's like you give up the lifetime passes. You can never go again. You have to buy them. You have to buy them every year, whatever. So you kind of can have your cake and eat it too if you want to do that. But what would you rather do? Would you rather be a fan for the rest of your life as two tickets no matter what, good seats, or would you rather have 1 year where you're the guy in the green room, guys coming out interviewing them?
I think 1 year in the green room. Especially if I get to pick the year, especially if I could time travel.
Oh, I like that. Yeah. Okay. Would you go back in time?
Yeah, I would definitely go back in time.
So what class?
I'm thinking like either the Jordan, the 03, maybe the 96. There's so many good ones. Like this year might even be like that level of a draft class. But I'm
We'll see.
looking here. I got a Slam. You're wearing a Slam shirt. I got a
Love Slam.
Slam magazine framed over here. The only Slam mag that I have framed, and it's the '96 draft. So
I love it.
I'm probably doing that one.
The only one
Shout
I
out to
have is
Kobe.
the only one I have is the AI Afro. What do they call it? The
Oh,
ABA ball one. I
yeah,
love it.
that's iconic.
It's unfortunately
That's
not.
iconic.
It took me years to find it because they like if you unless you were buying it resale and you didn't know it was real, they basically took it off
Yeah,
the shelves. And then I got an email from Slam and I signed up for the emails. I've had them for like 5 years only for
yeah,
that
yeah.
cover. And they emailed it one morning and it was like limited release. This will be gone by noon. And I'm like, so I
That's
immediately
for
just
me.
boom gone. Yeah, I'm like I went on there. I was done. It was in the mail next day.
Sell a
Um,
kidney, call it good.
Funny you say the 2003 96 class. We'll get to that. That's actually one of the last. We'll talk about that towards the end of this this or that. That's one of the questions I have for you.
Oh, perfect.
Spoiler, but anything else about the NBA draft in terms of the tickets? Like, what do you like? What's you mentioned? You get to pick, right? Like, if you mentioned a past class, all of them are worthy, right? But if you were able to sit in on this year's class, I guess that I'm gonna pivot and ask you a question.
Oh,
You know,
sweet.
who's the one guy you'd be really looking forward to interviewing as they come out as after they shake Adam Silver's hand?
Oh man, you're gonna make me pick one. Probably Scoot. I'm a
I
big
like
Scoot
it.
enthusiast. I'm a big Scoot enthusiast. I don't think that he and Wembanyama are worlds apart, and that hasn't been a popular take by consensus this year. But
Yeah,
I just I obviously understand why everybody loves Victor Wembanyama. He's number one on my board, but I just think look at Scoot because Wemby is like he might be the best prospect of a archetype that we've never seen before, but Scoot might be the best prospect of an archetype that we have seen before, and that archetype is like goaded. So
yeah.
if he could be the best of that type of a mold, that's really saying something. And I just love like I would ask him like floor general type mentality stuff. I'd ask him, how does he see the floor? When does he pick when he wants to shoot? When does he look to get a teammate open? Like what's it like developing a 3-point shot? What's it like playing with older people, but also holding their respect and so, having them hold you in such high regard, commanding their respect, being the coach on the floor, stuff like that. I think that that's more interesting. And I think that he could speak to it in such a way that people could like understand it where like how are you going to understand what it's like to be 6'10" or I'm sorry 7'10" with 20-foot wingspan and being able to like jump shoot and block shots from the other end of the court, like it'd be fun to listen to but you can't really relate to it where I think Scoot he's like 6'2", he's kind of like the everyman but with superpowers.
I like the superpower comment. It reminds me of John Wall, and I'm with you by the way. I think the gap. I think people are going to start to come around. I think Barlow was another one that was pretty early on this, where he was like,
Mm-hmm.
"Scoot's one of the best prospects I've ever seen." I don't like this.
Yeah.
It's just bad timing on his part for the for or not his part, but bad timing on for the fact that he is out of this draft. But it's I got a chance to see John Wall play when I was younger. Like that was
Oh yeah.
a thing. Like that was like okay, the greatest thing we've ever seen in this area, as well as just in general. One of the first real mixtapes that kind of just that era of
Move like a
YouTube
cat,
mixtapes.
like
I mean,
a legit
it was nuts.
cat.
It was
Yeah.
nuts, and that's why I'm glad, like you said, the Scoot thing. I've less vocalized it, but in conversation, I have been like, hey, I need people to understand that Scoot's the second. I say second best prospect I've ever seen guard wise, but like I got to watch John Wall. I'm very fortunate for that. So John
Yeah.
Wall in high school, what I saw was amazing, and it's hard to turn that down and be like, okay, but Scoot is one of the best prospects I've ever seen as a guard, and I just can't sit here and think that there are teams. There's got to be a team right now that gets one, and they at least think about it. They're like, okay, if they need a guard, they need a generational prospect potentially. You have to. You're not just gonna like sleep perfectly at night after the lottery. It's really
Yeah,
stupid.
and so two comments. One, Maxwell, my co-host on Draft Deeper, wrote a great piece where he compared him to Derrick Rose coming out of Memphis, and like out of if he could pick either one of them, if they both came out the same year, like who's the better prospect? He came out thinking that Scoot was better than Derrick Rose coming out of Memphis, and he was an MVP. And if that's the case, what does that say about how he should be looking at Scoot this year? And ultimately, like everyone's going to go Wimby because there's also like a crazy financial benefit for drafting him too, where like the worldwide economic benefit of getting him is just like too much to pass up, and he just might be a generational prospect like LeBron James or a Kobe Bryant or what have you, right? I know that might be taboo to say, but there's that. So I don't know, man. I just think that Scoot is just an incredible, incredible prospect who sees the game like Chris Paul and Steve Nash with the physique of a Russell Westbrook who can move like John. He is a Voltron of previous. He might be the best point guard prospect since like Isaiah Thomas of the Detroit Bad Boys, Isaiah Thomas, and that's saying something.
Yeah, I love it. You mentioned the has this of this and this of this guy and this of that, and I'm like, I had the exact same flashes through my mind when I sat down. I guess it would have been July or June or whatever a year ago before they're being drafted, and I really sat down and I started my board and I was like, okay, I've known about Victor for years. That is Victor. It is what it is. And I started watching Scoot, and I'll never forget it. I literally sat down and I think I watched him for 2 hours, whatever I had available, and that was before we had any of this year's stuff. And I was like, I don't understand. Like, I understand, but I don't understand.
Once he gets to the elbow, he's automatic, just like Chris Paul. It's crazy. There's nothing that you can say bad about him. And like I said, it might be taboo to say that I have him within the same tier as Wemby, but I would take Wemby 1. But there's going to be the team that drafts him. This was going to be the second point. The team that drafts him, you can hear, like, I can already hear it in my head where it's like, hey, look, as great as Wembanyama is, like, we really wanted Scoot Henderson. And Scoot is going to play to the level to where they can actually validate it. So they really have like a psychological advantage, whoever lands at number 2, because they're going to get probably the guy with the biggest chip on his shoulder hearing all year long that any other year you would be the number 1 pick. Any other year you'd be in the number 1 pick. He's heard that all year long. And in their one-on-one earlier in the season, he went right at Wembanyama, and I would say that he actually outperformed him in their full game matchup. It was unfortunate that he got hurt in the second matchup, but within their full game matchup, he outperformed him. So Scoot's going to come out with a crazy edge and a crazy chip on his shoulder, and whatever organization drafts him, they're going to totally feed into that, and he's just going to be a monster.
I know you guys are really good on mocks and whatnot. You guys have put out, I think, your 4 mocks in on No Ceilings NBA. But have at any point, was Houston ever the pick with Scoot at 2? Refresh my memory. There's been 4 of them now. Somebody can look that up and figure it out.
Oh man, I'd have to go back and look. To be honest with you,
the reason I bring it up is I've brought this up to people before, and I'll bring it up to you. Is if Houston. I don't know how to ask this. Like, one, we just talked about it. It's like, okay, obviously, I think Houston would probably still take Victor. But they're probably the team the most that probably would think about Scoot the most. And the reason I say that is because I think Rockets fans are starting to – and Rockets fans have spent all year on Twitter. I get to hang out with them and talk to them all the time. Love Rockets fans. But I think the way I ask it to everybody else was, is Scoot a better fit in Houston than Victor Wembanyama is?
I think –
it's tough.
I think here's I want to be I'm sorry, I'm trying to think about the best way that I can phrase this. I think Scoot mentality wise would be better on Houston. I think Wembanyama obviously offers them the highest ceiling as a team, but I think Scoot is the type of player that any team is going to want to have in a locker room. And it's not to say that Wembanyama isn't a great teammate or anything like that, right? But there's something about the guy that's always going to have their ball in their hand. Wemby is not going to always, as talented as he is going to have to share ball handling responsibilities, right? He is going to have to be set up. There are going to be other people that handle the ball. Look at Jason Tatum. He doesn't handle the ball all the time in Boston, and he's their best player, and he's an MVP candidate, right? So not talking negatively to Wemby, but Scoot is going to have the ball in his hand, and he's going to play his heart out. And that type of player, he's going to have to hold everybody else accountable. And that's the type of personality that Houston needs the most. They don't need another guy who thinks of himself as a star and a mega star that everyone else is going to benefit off of him and his star power, right? I think Wemby might have a little bit of that. He's a heck of a defender, excuse me. He's a heck of a defender, and he's not selfish. And he in himself is a great leader. I mean, Bilal Coulibaly is a guy who's shooting up draft boards right now, benefiting from playing off of Wembanyama. But to me, Scoot Henderson's personality, I think, is more so of what Houston needs. But talent wise, it's hard to doubt Victor Wembanyama.
Paraphrasing here, you said that Scoot has dog and they need dog. Got it. That's simple.
He has that dog in him. As
I love it.
Say.
I hate that analogy. I just think that's essentially what you're saying, and it's 100% true, which is why I bring it up. All right.
Yeah.
Got a few more here. Draft and stash in the second round, or take a chance on a guy who can play immediately, like a junior or whatever in the second round.
Not a big draft and stash guy. Like I understand.
Nice. Draw the line in the sand. I'm with you. Okay.
I understand it, and it can pay off. But I don't know. I want to have the guy in my organization. I care about second round picks. Like if I'm a team that's deep and maybe not have a roster spot available, I can start understanding and entertaining that. But even if a guy isn't going to play, he can still have an impact in my bench, in my locker room, my day-to-day practices, things like that. I might just bring in a guy who I know is going to be a grown up and who is going to not embarrass himself, as my co-host Maxwell Baumbach would say. I want to get a guy in who's not going to embarrass himself in the second round.
I like it. Here's an example, and the reason I bring it up is the track record is, I mean, I'm sure there are more examples, but just a few worth noting that are active players. The Pistons, Bogdanovich, I always get those two mixed up looking at their names, but I know it's the difference. Davis Bertans, Shetty Osman, Dario Saric, Willie Hernan-Gomez, Raul Neto, and Furkan Korkmaz are all current NBA veterans who were stashed at least 1 year after being drafted. So,
Detroit has Gabriela Procida, who was drafted and got stashed too. So we'll be looking to see him come back next year. He could be another name on there.
It's good. I like that you drew the line in the sand. I'm with you. I think if I can get I'm trying to think of this year, somebody in the second round that like would just be a couple of years into their college career and just be like, that's the guy I'm getting. But
especially if it's like I don't think of this guy as a second rounder, but I know in a lot of other mock drafts that he falls there. Trace Jackson Davis, get him in my locker room immediately.
Good. Yep, I was gonna go look at my own board and pluck a guy that's played multiple years in college and just go, yeah, I would love to have Andre Jackson in my room. Right, I'd love to have
Kevin McCullough, Azuolas Tubelis, Isaiah Wong.
You just gave me a bunch of them. Trace Jackson Davis is one actually I actually have him at 28. So that's sneaking up into could be a second rounder, but
good. He's a first rounder in my opinion, but I know a lot of people view him in that second round territory.
Well, look, I watched a lot of college basketball today before we started. We're recording this in the evening, and I mean, for him to basically that Illinois game, they won by 3, and the fact that he had as best of a game as he's going to have on this stretch he's on, and they only won by 3 at home, either shows you that Illinois is good, and they are, but it also shows you that he is doing everything he can to contribute to winning basketball. I think he only had 2 turnovers. It was just he had an unbelievable stat line.
Jalen Hood-Schifino kind of had a roller coaster. He had a roller coaster game, and a lot of people are going to look at that negatively, but Trace was the constant in that game, and because of him, and shout out to Malik Renew, I like him a lot. I think he might be a next year guy, but Trace he's all faithful. He's all reliable. SpongeBob's, jelly fishing net. He's all reliable that you can always count on him to go out there and get you 20, 10, 3 blocks, 6 assists. Like he does it all. I love Trace.
The passing out of the post is I just love
the playmaking this year is phenomenal.
I'm so glad. I made a point a few weeks ago. I don't remember who it was with now, but I was like, nothing against when Xavier went down, but it gave him the potential to be able to move the ball more and be open and pass. And I was like, I'm very excited for Trace, even though it was like circumstantially not the best thing. It also gave JHS an opportunity to just be the lead guy and see both sides of his not having to be a combo guy as much.
Absolutely.
All right. I have one more that's not actual this year prospects. We've got 2 of this year's prospects I want to talk about this or that wise. Woj and Shams tweets being on or off during the draft. Do you have them on and you're keeping up with the pick before and trades? It's tough because the trades have that how else are you finding out about them other than the broadcast being 8 years late versus do you really want to know who the 13th pick was even though the draft's been shaken up for minutes there and you're like, well, I'm going to look because then I'm going to know who the 13th pick is.
Well, so kind of taking the fun out of it, I guess, so because of the nature of my job, I've actually missed the past couple drafts. So I have to leave, for a couple months at a time for what I do. And I've actually missed the draft. So I don't get any notifications. I get emails from friends and family that send it to me. But I would probably ignore my phone watching the drafts, especially since I've been covering the draft, as a part of No Ceilings. I would probably just turn it off because I want to be surprised. I'm that way when it comes to movies. When Twitter, everyone goes and watches the movie the night it comes out, and I go to watch it the next day. I'm not touching my phone because I want to not get kind of led one way or the other. I don't want my opinion to be swayed by somebody else's. So, probably turning it off, man. To be honest with you.
This lovely thing about Twitter is you can mute specific words for X amount of time. Yeah. You can schedule how long. So if you know you're going to see the movie in 10 days, just mute, Ant-Man for 10 days.
Which is what I did. Yes, I saw it last night.
Oh, nice.
Have you seen it?
I'm not a Marvel. I'd kill me if you want. I'm not a Marvel guy. But
I would never kill you. I just respect you a little bit less.
People like hold me to the fire for at least my friends and family in my circle. Like they just. I've always been like, oh, why not a Marvel guy? And it's like I fell in love with Star Wars, and it's hard enough to keep up with one universe. To have to keep up with another, Fair. I'm like, okay, my brain can't handle it.
Kill me if you want. I'm not a big Star Wars dude, so
I'm not killing you either. I was the first thing that came out when I said it. I'm like, wait, that's gonna sound harsh, but yeah, whatever. All right, yeah, right. This or that, Marvel or Star Wars. So you just answered the question.
Yeah,
so
Marvel, easy.
Walked right into my hands there. It's great. All right, we have two groups of prospects here that I want to do this or that on. The first one is. And this one is not, I am not trying to get a rise out of anybody, you or the listeners, but it's a genuine question that we've had all year that I would think for the longest time, I thought a lot of people were going to, I'm prefacing way too much, but I thought a lot of people were going to be on one side of it. And then you're going to start seeing as the community gets to I call them the casuals.
Can I guess who catch up.
You know exactly who I'm about to say. Yes.
Is it a men and a SAR?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
The reason I'm prefacing it is because there are people that are going to hear this, whether they hear it in February or whether they hear it mid-March after Selection Sunday when they start catching up. And I know for a fact the casual draft community has not watched these two play. That just is what it is. So they're going to hear this and go, this is what these two guys think about it, whether they trust us or not. That's their judgment call.
Yeah.
Who do you, and you can say currently because that can change right now. Do you like Amen or Asar better?
Can I pick neither?
Yes. No. Well, for this example in the game, no. But I'm with you. For context, I have them literally no spots apart. I have them one here and one here.
I do too.
So there is no gap.
I have them 7 and 8 on my board right now.
No, the question is the order.
Yeah. So we'll answer both of these questions. I have them 7 and 8 on my board.
I love how you're beating around the bush. This is great.
And I have yeah, you're welcome. You could tell I podcast, right?
No, I love it. No, here's why I say thank you. I say thank you because you're almost like you're helping me out because like if I'm going to put this on TikTok or Instagram Reels, it's like you're just going to milk it for me, so people have to watch it for 5 seconds longer. So
Kyle, put the TikTok camera on.
Yeah, I like that. I love it.
There you go. Yeah. I have them men. So, and I know that even within No Ceilings, I'm in the minority, which is really crazy because, like you said, coming into the year, everybody was like, Amin is better, and Asor is like the other brother, right? And I think that a lot of people took that and was like, all right, let me try to prove this the opposite way around. And I'm not saying that people are trying to be trendy. I'm not saying that people are trying to just kind of be, what's a hipster or whatever, right? Is that the term that we used to say? I don't think that people, I don't think that people are trying to be hipster. I just think that for positionally, Trevor, is it more important that a guy on the ball can shoot, or is it more important that the guy away from the ball can shoot?
This is a hilarious way to word this because it's like how do I say this without tearing either of them down?
If you're off the ball, do you think it's better for you to have to be the shooter or the one with the ball?
I hope I understand your question right. What
position is more important to shoot then, the point guard or a shooting guard, small forward?
I think the obvious would be shooting guard, small forward, but I mean, I also want my playmaker to be able to not be a minus with the ball in his hands and be forced to do that. And by the way, both of these guys, I'm trying to figure out the best way to politely land this. Both of them aren't elite shooters. Let's just be we're not walking on eggshells here.
Nope.
But they are showing promise and sign and mechanic that I am very hopeful for. And the reason I would answer a question with a question would be like, if Amen doesn't go to the right team, like if he goes to a team where there is already a point guard, what is he going to be for me? I don't really understand that, and that's kind of my question with the question, and that's what I'm worried about.
But I don't think a team is going to say, "Hey, we got a point guard. All we're missing is a is a point guard player that we can play at shooting guard that can't shoot. So let's
Yeah.
draft him and put him here. You know what I mean? So there are a couple teams, San Antonio. I know
Thank you.
everyone's high on the Markelle Fultz resurgence in Orlando, but if Amin Thompson is a 1% athlete in all of NBA and he is 6'6" and has elite feel, right? Like, is he not ideal to maybe go play in Orlando? You know, what about Washington? Could they use a point guard, right? So there's three teams that might be flirting with him within that range that could really go and grab him, right? So I don't think that a team is going to say, we don't need a point guard. Let's draft the man Thompson. You know what I mean? I think that there are enough bad teams that are going to be picking around that kind of 5 to 10 range
Yep.
that are going to say, all right, let's get him in Thompson because he's a point guard. We need one, and he has one of the higher ceilings within all the draft, right? And then Asar, he's an off-ball guy, and he's thought of not being as elite of an athlete. I don't think that they're that far apart athletically. People say that he is just as good a ball handler as a man. My question is then how come he's not handling the ball as much as a man? He's a better defender, which I would agree with, but he can't shoot either. So if I'm drafting a guy who's less athletic of the two of them, who might be a better defender, who also can't shoot and plays better away from the ball, like I don't know why that's more attractive to people. That's just something that I can't like wrap my head around, but I have both of them lower than I think consensus because
I was going to point that out because so do I. I think that's you're basically saying all this and you're explaining the fact that people are going to look up and go, well, why don't you have them at 4 and 6? Like because
we're 3 and 4.
Because everything that you just said backs up why you feel that, and that's why I'm very clear when I talk about them. I am not tearing them down by any stretch of the imagination. I need people to know that. But we are in the same place. You basically gave every good reason of like, if I'm Charlotte,
yeah,
I'm not picking either of them probably. Asar maybe, but like Charlotte.
Yeah, if I'm picking one, I'm picking Asar.
Yeah,
because they have LaMelo Ball. Although correct. I do think Amin and LaMelo could be kind of cool to watch. But I'm not high on either of them because like their biggest thing, Trevor, is that they're walking paint touches, but they can't finish in the paint. That's like being
scary.
A defensive minded guy, but you suck in isolation, or a sharpshooter that can't shoot. Like if you can get to the paint whenever you want, like I get the idea that if they get to the paint, they draw the defense in, they can pass to the next guy. I get that, but also if you get to the paint and you can't finish, then what's the point of you getting to the paint? If you can't shoot on top of that, and we really have no way to adequately assess their defense. Like they're crushing their competition, but they're as old as like some sophomores in college. You know what I mean? Like there are some sophomores in college that are their same age that are playing D1 basketball in the SEC, ACC, Big East, what have you. And they're playing against really talented, very, very good soon-to-be college prospects. Like the top high school prep AAU stars that are in their classes, they're playing against them, but it's not the SEC. It's not the ACC. It's not the Big East. It's not the Big 12. It's not the Pac-12. It's none of those. You know what I mean? So like, how do we adequately assess the level of competition? Like this is a pivotal moment in OTE history. Like there's a lot riding on the success of both of these guys. And I hope that they both meet every single expectation. But if I'm an NBA front office and I'm drafting for the future of my job and the success of my team, like once I get past 5, then I can start entertaining like the ceiling and the athleticism and the star power that those two bring. But I just see a number of college guys that I would much rather take a chance on ahead of them.
It's the Keontae George, Amin Thompson debate that I've been having for 6 months. What's funny, though, and I'll summarize with this before we go with the last one, it's just always the beautiful thing I found about the NBA draft is we say all these nice things and we say all these reasons why we really don't have them 3 to 6. And I think you said 7 and 8. I currently have them at 6 and 7. My update will be on March 1st, but at least publicly. But I have them all in that range, and we both have them in the top 10 comfortably. And yet we're still considering them in the top 10. Like that needs to be understood. Like these guys are still both elite prospects. It's something we have to grasp. We as a community have to grasp that there are flaws in their game, but I can sit here and do the exact same thing to Brandon Miller, G.G. Jackson, to Quavion Smith, Cason Wallace, Taylor Hendricks, all guys that I have realistically
Jett
in that
Howard.
same range. Jett Howard's another one. That's a great segue. It would be a great segue if this was the last one, but that's
all good.
We will talk about him in just a moment. Man, that would have been a beautiful segue.
I'm
but
sorry.
I figured Amen and Asar were the more polarizing this or that, so I figured I'd start with them. I wouldn't want to end with them. So, anything else about the Thompson twins? I know you've had a chance to go down there and see them in person and things like that.
Yeah.
Anything about just OTE or Amen and Asar that you'd like to? This is your floor.
They are great kids. They're not kids, they're men. They're great young men. They are very hard, dedicated workers. The OTE, I highly encourage any parent that believes that their kid has a shot at very competitive Division I basketball, the G League Ignite, or the NBA to consider the OTE, because they can still get their schooling done. They can make a good amount of money, and they have top flight facilities, and there are people that matter in those facilities all the time. You're getting coached by people with, overseas coaching experience, NBA experience, NCAA experience. You are getting the top of all of those things. And since they're so young in their infancy, No Ceilings can relate a lot to Overtime Elite, because we were like essentially the same timeline. Like, we have been around for the same amount of time, and they've invited us there, welcomed us with open arms. I love everything that they have going on. I just think that the Thompson twins, they care so much about basketball. They're highly competitive. They are hard workers. And I think that they have a shot to be, some of the best players within this draft class. It's just hard to, for right now, adequately assess what Overtime Elite is doing and how it compares across different types of organizations or leagues, because of how young it is.
I love it, and I appreciate your transparency with it, because a lot of people had question marks, myself included, and I trust your opinion, and you've helped me understand what's going on there a little bit better and see it a little bit better. So
I know people hate the broadcast.
I'm not gonna say
what they have going on is so much more deep rooted and developed and nurtured. The broadcast is not meant for everybody, right? The people that love OTE, they are the target audience, right?
Your Instagram basketball
it's youthful,
fans.
social media, entwined and infused, age group that they are targeting, and they love it. The kids look like, there are so many young fans at OTE, and that's what makes them special. But if you have doubts, I highly encourage you to go check out their facilities. They're actually really nice people. Like, everybody there, Ryan Gomes walked up and talked to me and said, "Hey, I'm familiar with No Ceilings. You guys do great work." Shook my hand, almost crushed my hand. I'm just kidding. He's just a big dude, but everyone there is so open and welcoming, and they want people to know what they have going on. It's not a big secret, the Overtime Elite. If you can go check it out, I highly encourage you to do so.
For me, it's only a hop, skip, and a jump 6 hours south, so maybe we'll see.
Yeah.
I'd love to go down there eventually. I have some friends in Atlanta too. I'd like to visit and stuff. So, all right, last one. We'll pivot from a completely new developmental program to powerhouse, or I guess a powerhouse. Haha, I'm trying to preface it, but Derek Lively or Kalel Ware, two guys that I had almost neck and neck on my board for a lot of the year, and then the gap has started to widen, and I have an answer currently, but it will change soon. Again, updates on March 1st. But Derek Lively or Kalel Ware?
I like Derek Lively more than Ware coming into the season.
So did I.
And then then both of them started playing, and they both started getting closer to each other, and not for the right reasons. Lively started sinking down to where I started looking at Ware. Now it's Lively, hands down. He just, in my opinion, I can't speak to this based off of any intel or experience. When I'm watching the games, Lively looks like he tries harder. He is in more control of the opportunities that he can control than Kalel Ware, something that I understand not everybody is in the ideal ecosystem for their development. Jalen Duren, prime example of that. Yeah. Memphis was not the best ecosystem for him, but I still liked him a lot.
Nor was it for Ramani Bates either. Just want to be.
It wasn't for Ramani Bates either.
Well.
And I liked what Duren was doing because he took total control of the opportunities that he could take control of. I wrote about this when I wrote a piece about Kalel, where I actually sat down and gave him undivided attention, and I watched him. I think that he's going to be a fine player, but if I have to pick between him and Dereck Lively's shot blocking, rim protection has been a constant throughout the year, even though his offense has been abysmal.
Yeah.
For large parts of the year. His rebounding has been there. Neither one of them really set screens well. That's just because that Ware is not that big of a big, and Lively just doesn't know how to set them. I want to believe. I think that once he does get, understand that technique, that he'll actually be good at it. But neither one of them are overwhelming me right now. But if I had to pick one, I'm going to go with Lively.
All right, we'll end with, and by the way, for me, it's right now I have Ware ahead, but a lot has changed in the last 30 days. I've got to kind of absorb. I got to see Lively in person before he kind of got going a little bit in the loss to NC State at home, but it was unfortunate to see kind of just the almost lostness on offense, but I think a lot of that's starting to turn around. So I would say that I have Ware, but I think it's just going to keep flip-flopping. I think Ware...
I just hate that Ware doesn't get to play.
I know.
And his shooting is bad, and he doesn't get to play, and I don't know if that's a him thing, if that's a coach thing, maybe somewhere in the middle, I just hate that his playing time is inconsistent as his production.
Yeah, and Shire started to trust Lively more, which is what's been really important for the turnaround. So
absolutely.
All right, we're going to end with this where we talk about Jett Howard for a few minutes. You mentioned earlier talking about the elite draft classes. And I took a deep dive for a minute to figure out. So assuming that Jordan's draft is just, it is what it is, Michael Jordan, Hakeem Olajuwon. Really after that, and I think Barkley was that one as well. After that, though, really that's your three, and there's really a couple that just kind of keep that class afloat.
Stockton
was in there. Yeah, there's so I guess thinking about that there's a big three or big four there. It's not as deep as the two I'm about to read to you, at least in terms of I got to see a lot of these guys, so I'm kind of being a little more biased. But assuming that 84 is off, 83, whatever it is, 83, 84 is off the table. I always get the year itself in my head.
Yeah, I'm not a big year dude. I'm a player's draft class, who the best player out of that draft class was. Yeah,
I can always remember, and I'm like, okay, Jordan played in 83, draft 84. Got it. Okay. So 2003 and 96, when you actually sit down and play around with them, you realize how similar they actually are. So I'm going to make you this or that them. 2003, I'm going to give you some context, and for the listeners, that might just not be there, so you're not making this blind.
Yeah, do this for the listeners. I know everything about both of those draft classes, but if you can help the listener.
Yeah, I don't want you to feel like you're having to make this out-of-pocket guess, because when's the last time you sat down and looked at these classes? It's like, I don't blame you.
Oh, man, yeah. I don't Google draft classes that often, unless I'm doing a
redraft or whatever.
A redraft or a piece or something,
So 2003... number of picks is scary. So, the way they're, similar. So, number of picks in 2003 was 58. And number of picks in 96 was 58, which is, so, boom. All right. Automatically, you're like, hey, whatever, right? 58 picks. Then you realize both classes had 47 people actively play a minute in the NBA. That means on a team. So, 47, that's pretty good, right? I'm going to read you the All-Stars for 2003 first. I'm going to read you the All-Stars for 96 after that. And then I'm going to read other notable players in those classes, and you can make your own opinion. Okay. So in 2003, All-Stars were Carmelo Anthony. This is at least one time in their career.
Yes.
Chris Bosh, Josh Howard. Shout out Josh Howard, Wake Forest. LeBron James, Chris Kaman, Kyle Korver. People forget Kyle Korver was an All-Star. Dwayne Wade, David West. Shout out David West from my little town. And Mo Williams. That's 9. Other notable players that are important, Boris Diaw. And this was my opinion. I just picked notable players that I found notable.
Diaw was 03?
Yeah. Huh. Okay. Crazy. And I love doing this stuff because you're like, man, he was in that class. Again, I pluck these. I think Boris Diaw is a noble player. I also got to watch him grow up on title teams. Yeah. I did too. It was more of a passion pick for me. But I just wanted to mention notable players that I thought.
He's a big Suns guy, yeah.
Yes. Kirk Heinrich, Zaza Pachulia, Steve Blake, Nick Collison, Leandro Barbosa, Kendrick Perkins, Willie Green, Matt Bonner, James Jones, Luke Walton. So now that you hear that, you know that that's a lot of good notable guys that we watched growing up. On the other side, All-Stars for 96 was Sharif Abdur-Rahim, Ray Allen, Kobe Bryant. Shout out to Kobe. Zydrunas Ilgauskas, Allen Iverson, Stephon Marbury, Steve Nash, Jermaine O'Neal, Peja Stojakovic, and Antoine Walker. The only other notable players, and this is just my opinion, was Marcus Camby, Marcus Camby was never
Absolutely,
an All-Star,
Mark.
which is nuts. He was number 2
That's
overall,
nuts.
couple-time Defensive Player of the Year. Like, just kind of a guy people are going to forget, right? I know you said you
Yeah.
have it framed, which is cool. You get
Yeah,
to
I'm looking
is
at
he
him.
on there?
He's got a look on his face like,
Yeah.
what do you mean I'm a notable player?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
I love it. Notable player, Marcus Camby, Tony Delk. I don't know if it's just because I watched the Hornets.
No, Tony, yeah,
Tony Delk was
absolutely.
good. Derek Fisher. That's a really
Yes.
big one, right? He's not going to pop up on
UALR,
the
baby, from
I love
Arkansas. He's a Trojan. Yep.
I love it that he's not going to pop up when you Google 96 unless you're like looking down in the second. But he was a second-round pick in that year. Eric Dampier and Kerry Kittles. So,
Man.
knowing how similar these classes actually are, because like
Sheesh.
we both know they're historic, but then you look at them like that and you go, there's like no difference. Like, it's crazy. There's a couple more All-Stars in this one, and maybe
I got one more that I want you to look for me after I make this pick.
Okay,
And
go right
I
ahead.
know that you didn't prep this. You can start pulling it up now if you want. Look
Go
up the 09 class.
Okay.
Yeah. But I'm gonna go 96, and it's mainly just because I'm a nostalgia head. I'm be 33 years old next month. So but in all honesty, I just think too that talent wise, like top to bottom, I think that 96 has it beat, but it's close, man. Like I would love someone, I'm sure it's already out there. I'm sure that somebody has done a 2K sim where they had both of these draft classes go head to head against each other, man. But I mean, LeBron's great. He's either 1 or 2 on everybody's board, maybe 3 for the people who still, care about Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Um, top 3 prospect or top 3 player of all time easily. He's second on my personal rankings, but Kobe Bryant is goated. Ray Allen is goated. There's so many, Peja Stojakovic being a guy so far down that list is just crazy to me. And his son's going to be drafted soon, which is crazy. So I don't know. I gotta go 96, but 03 is certainly like not a draft class to be seen as that. Probably if I had to pick an order, they'd probably go second.
I love it.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna. I mean, I'll give you an answer, but I'm not gonna sit here and talk about it forever because I want to get to Jett Howard soon. But I also want to answer your 2009. Like, I want to look at that one because it is intriguing. I think it's 2003, and it's only because I think there were more notable role players that, whether it was me watching them growing up or not, I think your Boris Diaw's, Leandro Barbosa was a big piece of the Warriors championship. I believe he was on the Suns for a little while too.
Yeah, also teammate.
Yeah, Kendrick Perkins is another huge one. He was, I mean, whether people like it or not, he was the big man for the Celtics. That was how we played basketball back then.
He's like their Eric Dampier.
Yeah.
Dampier is a champion. Yeah.
I like it. James Jones, I guess I'm taking consideration also the stuff he's doing as a front office member. I don't know if that's too much to think about, but Boris Diaw, Luke Walton was obviously a coach for a while. Matt Bonner was an unbelievable shooter for the Spurs. I just think if you're looking at razor thin margins, it also is really hard to sit here and go, for me, I know Kobe's my favorite player of all time. People get that. But Carmelo Anthony is another top 3 player for me, favorite all time. Unfortunately, AI is number 2. So literally for me, this is like picking, like just like pulling hair out. But I would have to give the edge because of a LeBron James type play. Like you said, you're getting a top 3 player all time, top 2 arguably all time versus, and that's no disrespect. I don't think Kobe's. I think it's Jordan, LeBron, Kareem. Period. Like those are the 3, right? So.
Steve Nash, though.
Steve Nash, I know. It's such a like if you could sit here and like play with the stats, I'm sure that there's probably a discrepancy when you pull up stats. I'm sure there probably is.
I'm sure.
We're probably going to sound dumb if somebody's going to pull the report and send it to us and be like, here you go. Here's why you're both dumb. But we also disagreed, so I think it's fun. 09, what did you have to say about 09? Because I think this is the Blake Griffin, Hasheem Thabeet, James Harden. I'm just reading the top couple. Tyreek Evans, Ricky Rubio, Johnny Flynn. So 2 chances at getting Steph Curry. The Minnesota Timberwolves did not take him. Steph Curry went number 7, and then there's a couple other there. DeMar DeRozan was notable. Yep. Ty Lawson was in there. Drew Holiday. Wow.
Drew Holiday. Yeah. I just think that this class is like sneaky.
It is
like sneaky up there. And I think 2011, because that was the Giannis draft, right? So I just think 09, it's crazy how great it is, but how out of whack it is at the same time. If you looked at like where these players were selected, I just think that it's nuts that how how we were saying, James Harden, Steph Curry, DeMar DeRozan are all in this class, but they were all picked like way further down. And Drew Holiday too, way further down than where we would do them in a redraft now. I just think like it's crazy how talented it is and how out of whack it played out it's played itself out at the same time.
Patty Mills was 55th.
Isn't that crazy? And he's
Patrick Beverly,
still
wow, 42. Yeah.
Yep.
Danny Green was 46.
Yep.
UNC
Second
team.
round pick. Yep.
That's crazy. Giannis, by the way, was 2013, but it's actually there's
2013,
nothing wrong about that, not knowing that, because that 2013 class was horrible. Like, it was actually horrible. So I'm glad you said it, because honestly, it proved a point that you didn't even mean to make, where how bad 2013 was. Giannis basically saved that draft.
Yes,
it's scary how bad that
being a
draft.
stinker.
I remember watching it being like, oh man, like I wasn't even like that back then. I just watched the draft as a fan, but my goodness. Oh, anyway. Yeah. All right, let's get to Jett Howard. So,
okay.
He is obviously the point of conversation for this, because shout out to Game Day, did a partnership with Game Day to do a creator poll and get some better understanding of what my audience likes and what they are looking at. The main polls that first that ran week 1 was college basketball or NBA. What are people watching more of right now? College basketball won 12-9, and then favorite NBA team, no shocker here, was the Charlotte Hornets. I'm based out of North Carolina. Not surprised by that at all. I can probably think of who 4 of those people are right now. The Grizzlies were up there too. The Knicks were up there. The Lakers, Warriors, Suns, a lot of your big market teams, which was cool to see some of my listeners. And then the bottom question. I did it on the bottom to see if it would actually get the most votes, and it did, because the draft is so compelling. It got the most votes out of anything. I put up originally for you, I mentioned this to you when we brought this episode up, was Jett Howard, Gigi Jackson, and Taylor Hendricks, and I also put other, because there's a really cool feature on Game Day where you can submit your answer instead of whatever the poll was. Others receiving votes were Tyree Appleby, and I can tell you who said that. You remember Josh?
I remember Josh.
Josh is working at Wake Forest. Love Josh. Tyree Appleby's awesome, but unfortunately not.
I got to interview Bobby Clintman.
Nice,
off of that team.
Yep.
Yeah,
I gave you. I talked about him with. I did a draft chat with Phil Dexter, a good friend of mine here in Raleigh.
Okay,
College
cool.
Hoops Corner, or College Hoops. God, what's the name of that show? Everything College Basketball Show. Also a writer from other places as well. And we talked about the Tobacco Road prospects, and he got brought up. And I gave you a shout out of that article, because you definitely gave me a better understanding of him and that team. And then they end up. They're a pretty good team in the ACC this year. So hope Bobby gets to play a little more next year. But others receiving votes also was Trace Jackson Davis. Cason Wallace got 2 votes. Scoot Henderson got 3 votes. Drew Timme got 4 votes, which I thought was interesting. Taylor Hendricks got 4. Gigi Jackson got 5. Zach Edey got 6. And then resounding, pretty small gap now that you look at it, but Jett Howard did win with 10 votes. So we're here to talk about Jett Howard. Shout out to Game Day. But I am actually really glad that he won. I really love Taylor Hendricks, and I love the fit to Oklahoma City that I think Metcalf put him in there in the mock, and I think they did it in their episode as well. But I love the fit to Oklahoma City for Taylor Hendricks. I love to talk about Taylor Hendricks. I think he
feels like an OKC guy. Yeah,
he does. I think he's a poor man's Jarris Walker. We can talk about that another time. I do think simmer on that. I don't know if people
they played each other.
Yeah. They did. I want to go back and watch that again. But Jett Howard, right? The reason we're here. So the reason I want to talk about Jett Howard is because I have been most of the year a little lower on him, and I wanted to see some things come together. So I'm gonna basically this is your floor for Jett Howard, because he will go up my board this next update on March 1st. I want to be transparent about that. I currently have him at, for context, for if I do say anything, is Jett Howard at 24. There's a lot of guys around him that are similar type prospects. Stats this year in 30 minutes, 25 games played for Michigan, 42% from the field, 37% from 3, 80% from the free throw line, averaging 14.5 points, 2.5 assists, 2.5 rebounds, 0.7 blocks, 0.4 steals, and 2 fouls a game, and 1.2 turnovers. So without any context there, all those stats sound pretty good, right? But really the things I want to talk about with him is what he is as a prospect and what he means to you and where you have him. Obviously, I think that's important for what you think about him. So just talk to me through things. What's your favorite thing about Jett Howard? I guess we'll start with.
Wow, favorite thing. He's a microwave shooter, man. Like, can I ask you a question, Trevor? I know that you threw it at me. I'm a podcaster. I can't help it. I like to pick people's brains too. Where do you have Brandon Miller on your board?
So I'm glad this is going to be talking about putting feet to the fire. This is going to be fun. You're always welcome back here before I say that. Before I answer your question, because don't leave. Okay,
I won't.
But before March 1st, so on the February 1st update, I had him at 8.
Okay. I don't think that's unforgivable for the time.
January 1st, this is why I said don't leave the Zoom. Okay. The Zoom button is don't look at the end button.
I won't. I'm not.
I had
my hands off the mouse.
I had him at 14. At 14 on January 1st, because I think that was just before he really gave me that SEC bump that I saw, and I was like, okay.
Was that time of the 2-point percentage conversation?
It was part of it, yes. I was one of the people that you probably were like, because I didn't hide it. I mean, there were people that blew it out of consideration, but I have to say thank you because you did a video on it, really quick. It was like a minute and a half about how some of these things and the body build and things like that, right? How he's going to grow into his frame and stuff. And I never was really worried about the frame. I like that he is what he is, and I'm glad that you asked this because he's him and Jett Howard, the more I think about it, I'm like, they do remind me of each other.
So where are you going to have him? Give me a range where you think that you'll place him March 1st.
He'll be higher than 8. I will have to sit down and really debate where he's going to end up being with Cam, Keontae.
So 3 through 7?
Yeah, he'll be in the same range that he should be in right now. He'll be higher.
Okay.
Which is,
all right.
By the way, I wanted to give him time because there were some things that I didn't particularly love, but I also was like, I can't be dumb and say he's not a top, whatever prospect.
Well, I mean, your assignment's not due yet, right? Like you're fine to have you're fine to have your opinion where you have it now, right? Because the draft isn't happening tomorrow, right? So so let me back up. The reason I asked that question, and you're kind of proving my theory correct, because you have him 8 and you have Jett at 14, so you don't have them worlds apart, or 24, excuse me, you have them 24. So
I do kind of have them worlds apart. If you
do kind of have them worlds apart, but so I don't think that you should. If I can offer you this, Trevor,
this is good,
because their best skill is like the exact same thing.
Okay,
they're both big wings that can handle the ball and can shoot. They both are going to be good kind of tertiary, secondary, weak side ball handling creators, even out of the pick and roll. So they both offer similar skill there. I think you're correct to have Brandon Miller ranked higher because he competes defensively and rebounds.
Yes.
So where I have personally Brandon Miller number 3 on my board, ahead of the
probably would. I had a feeling
ahead of the Thompsons.
Yeah.
But I have Jett at number 9 behind Whitmore, behind the Thompsons. It's because he's lacking defensively and lacking in competing on the boards. But I still think at 6, he's only listed at like 6'8". I think he's bigger than that. I think that he and Jarris Walker, they're going to measure bigger than what they came into the season measured as, because they're both just like ginormous. I think that the things that Jett is deficient at is going to improve over time. He's pretty young within his class, and Michigan, bless their hearts, their offense is not the best in all of college basketball, whereas Alabama, Coach Oates is running a heck of an offense, very analytically driven, very NBA style, where Hunter Dickinson is the guy, the de facto guy. Kobe Buffkin is making a case for himself to be a first-round draft pick. But their offense is so not fun to watch, although they do have all of this talent. I think that Jarris is going to improve because he's going to get stronger to go along with that frame. He's going to be told that he has to compete defensively to see the court at the NBA level. And I hope, for the love of God, that the rebounding numbers are a reflection of the scheme and not the motor or the desire to compete, because he has the makings to be a good team defender and a good rebounder. I'm not saying that I think that he'll ever be like I think Brandon Miller has a chance at being like a pretty decent defender. Yeah, like in the molds of like a Robert Covington maybe, where he's not like an isolationist lockdown dude, but like weak side rim protection could be like his calling card because of his size and ability, agility, reflexes, all of that. So Jett has a ways to go in there, but I think that the main thing that makes Jett a top 10 player, in my opinion, is because he has just nuclear scoring from the perimeter and has a handle to go along with his size.
So I want to pluck one thing you said, because I think it's an interesting, it's a same question, different answer, I think is the way I would word it. You mentioned the frame and end up being bigger than he actually is, etc. shout out to Albert, who had a really good article on him about, I think it was middle of last month, where he said that he looks like he's much bigger than 6'8" sometimes.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the motor part of it, where you're like, okay, we know he's a bigger physical frame, and we know he can microwave score. We know he can shoot. That was like why I didn't even lead with the shooting and even ask you a question about it, because it's very obvious. That is the thing that he does well. You mentioned the rebounding as part of, like, I wonder if that's a sign of it could be the motor. And I'm with you. I think the motor, I'm going to question it for a little bit until I see a little bit more, because I think the thing that is making me nervous about it, whether his big frame is there or not, we know he has a decent first step. I see why can't he be more aggressive attacking the rim, I think is the part where I would go. It's similar to the rebounding, right? Is it the motor? Is it the style of offense that the team plays? I don't know, which is what makes him so intriguing. It's not something, any reason I should have had him at 24. There was things, I made this comment to Chuck when I talked to him a few months ago, Checking Darts, and I said, this class has 16, I like the top 16 really, really well. And his first question for me was, who was 17? And it was like, the reason I say that is because I think Jett Howard is better than 24, but I liked a lot of things and a lot of prospects ahead of him for different reasons. So it was and I hate to say that's a lazy thing to say, but it is. I do like a lot of the guys ahead of him. He'll probably end up being in the lottery for me very safely and very comfortably. But I do question some of the motor, and tying this all back together is some of it, like if he's that physical and if he is bigger than 6'8", or if he's 6'8" and plays like he's 6'10", why isn't he just, he's fast enough. I know he is. Why isn't he attacking the basket at a higher clip or better clip?
There's a number of nits that I could pick here as to why that might be the case. The fact that we even have to ask that question is not a good thing. The fact that
that's what I was worried about.
The fact that we even have to dive into this and maybe get into more of the psychology of the player or its psychology or the ecosystem around him is not a good thing. Like being that size, knowing that Kobe Buffkin is a better, more fiery rebounder, even on the offensive glass, than what we see from Jett is not good. I would say that if I was his defense attorney and I was making a case for why this would be the thing, I would say nepotism might be the reason why, because I don't know, which is weird that Coach Howard would be fine with his son not being a good rebounder, considering what he did in the NBA, you know what I mean? But I don't know, like Hunter Dickinson, that's kind of his deal, and they kind of play 5 out away from him. So I don't know if it's, again, scheme, or if it's maybe his dad isn't like pushing it that hard, but he's not going to have that when he gets drafted to the NBA. Like, there's going to be a coach that he goes and plays for and is like, hey, dude, like, I don't care where you came from. I don't care where you ranked in your class. Like, everybody's the best player from their team here. And sometimes people don't even get drafted and they make it on a roster, and they're going to out rebound you. So if you're going to be 6'8" on my team, you're going to go after the daggone rebound. So I would say that if I was his defense attorney, I would say, well, let's not be too hard on him, right? Because maybe his dad isn't pushing him to be a rebounder, maybe because offense is what sells the most in today's NBA. Like, how often do we hear about, like, oh, today's NBA, like, this is the most offense that we've ever seen in league history and stuff like that. So, like, if you're going to be a rebounder wing, like, that's not going to be as sexy as being a nuclear 3-point weapon, and let's let everybody else worry about that gritty, grimy stuff. We want you to be nuclear shooter and also to be a capable ball handler, which he does both of those things very well. So I would say maybe that would be the route I would go if I was making a defense for him. But I hate that I even have to do that, because he should be going after rebounds. Completely
fair. This segment is designed to, I wanted people to understand that we are talking about him because he deserves this conversation, and the weaknesses and whatever people would call them are warranted, because that's how we should evaluate. We should be honest with these prospects. The question I had that was thought-provoking, and that's how we can end, and I have a couple rapid-fire things at the end I ask every guest, title pick, etc. for you. And you mentioned the ball handling that Jett has, and I think all of that stuff is really good, and that's probably going to be your easy answer, and I'm okay with that. But why is Jett Howard not just this year's Caleb Houston?
Well, Caleb Houston is actually doing really well.
He is. They remind me of each
And
other. It's the only reason I'm saying that. I'm not. It's not a knock. By the way.
you're not the first person I've heard make that comparison.
Dang it. I'm just kidding.
No, you're fine. To me, that's credit upon you, right?
Someone probably already
Because
thought of that. I knew you were going to
no,
say that.
you're a bright mind in the game, man, and I really do appreciate you bringing that up. Why is he not? Because Caleb Houston was a shooter that didn't shoot very well.
Okay, that's
You
a great
know?
way to put that. I like that. Very
And
simple. Rip the
Jett
Band-Aid off. Yeah, that's great.
and Jett is, I would say, more athletically gifted.
He is.
Caleb Houston, I thought, was actually kind of under discussed, like
Yeah.
his athleticism went. And I would say that I trust Jett Howard more on the ball than I did Caleb Houston. So Jett Howard's a shooter that can shoot. Caleb Houston was like, "Hey, you're a shooter. Where's the shot?" you
I
know.
love it. I love it. As
Yeah.
somebody who just had him outside the first last year at the end of the cycle, I thought that I knew Jett was going to be better, and I knew he was going to be higher for me. But why? I wanted to talk through why, because when I watched both of them, I'm like, okay, they are similar archetypes, but I think Jett's size being bigger than 6'8" eventually. I'm with you. If I could I'm somewhat of a betting man, but if I could be like, here's $30 Vegas, I think that he will measure 2 inches taller than 6'8". I would very easily right now run to Vegas and put that $25-$30 on that, because I do think he's going to end up being bigger than 6'8". Shout out to Albert again for that. One thing I'll say about him, and then we can close up here. I have a couple quick hit things at the end.
Sure.
Shooting touch for him, you mentioned it's very obvious. It is what it is. He's really good at it. I'm very excited to see it continue to develop. Obviously, you see that it's almost like projecting forward, and I like to look at guys and go, if they're going to have a really good rookie year, and even if they're not, we kind of over-exaggerate that now. It's like if you don't come in and you don't act like Paolo your first year. I do too, and I just want to be clear about that. However, thinking through the sophomore slump ahead of time is what is going to be the thing that he looks good in his sophomore year of the NBA, his junior year of the NBA, et cetera. What's something I'm going to be excited about in the future? Whether he shoots 25% from three his sophomore year or not, I'm always going to know that he's going to improve upon as a shooter and be able to be good on the floor offensively. My favorite thing to evaluate with prospects is what is their absolute NBA skill that I want to, if I'm a coach of the Orlando Magic, they're going to be on my team for this reason. Is I love the way he moves off the ball. I think pin downs are really good. Now, granted, Hunter Dickinson's one of the best big man. I think he's one of the best screeners in the country. I don't care what anyone says. But big body, wide shoulders, whatever. But the way he gets to his spots, as I was doing the film for this to talk to you about him, I kept watching every time he got open or every time he got a good opportunity was because he knew where to cut, how to cut, come off of an action. There was a lot of really good things there. And obviously that's a testament to some of his teammates. But I think he's really good and knows how to play offensively. I think he's really smart, and I think that's going to be the thing that keeps him on an NBA floor.
Yeah, I think he processes his game very well, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see his passing come along too, because as a scorer, right, like you're going to attract so much attention to yourself, or as a shooter with a lot of gravity on the perimeter, you're going to attract so much attention to yourself. And in his case, he can handle the ball, so if he gets chased off the line, he can make a move to the bucket, right? And I think that he has enough to his game where he can adjust to the mid range or even convert around the rim. But I also wouldn't be surprised if we see some really nice passes from him in the NBA.
I'm with you there. All right, let's quick hit these things at the end. I like asking these questions. These first two are more specific to you. We'll rapid fire these, and then I ask every guest who they think comes out of the East and the West in the NBA and who wins the NCAA title. First thing is who is rising up your board right now? Who's somebody you're really excited?
Ooh,
the context of that is up to you, whether it's this week, this month, or this year. It doesn't matter. Who's somebody that's really rising up your board?
That's really tough for me. I would probably say Jordan Hawkins, reluctantly.
I've had him. Rucker would like that too.
Yeah, a lot of the no ceilings guys are going to be like, "It's about time, Gillaspie." But yeah, I've had him as a high second, and for the longest time, I just didn't know like who is falling out and like who he jumps over. But I think Jordan Hawkins is going to be my latest riser on my board.
The reason I asked is because Jett Howard was mine, so that's why it was like an easy segue. It was perfect. Like, okay, Jett Howard's quickly rising for me. That's where it should be. Who's a sleeper to watch out for? Not named Brandon Podimski. Is that how I say it? Pajimski. I knew I was going to mispronounce it, but who is a sleeper to watch out for that's not named Brandon Pajimski? Yeah, there you go.
I know you'll like
that's a good one. I know that's a good one.
Yeah, for sure. I know you'll like this one. Is Jalen Slauson. I recently wrote about him on NoCeilingsNBA.com, and to me, there's so many people that are trying to be put into this void, like Grant Nelson, players like that, Drew Pember.
I
Haven't
love Drew
heard
Pember,
from
by the way. Love Drew
yeah.
Pember. That's a good one. Love you. Love Drew Pember.
I haven't heard either of those names in a while, but Jalen Slauson has still been plucking away, and he was kind of like one of these preseason sleepers that everyone was talking about. Also, haven't heard much about him, but he's shooting like 39% from deep since the turn of the calendar year,
Yes.
and that's a huge development in his game, considering that he can literally do everything else on the floor. So, he's a sleeper, and then Bilal Koulibaly out of
Yeah.
France. Play
Thank you.
Victor Wembanyama's teammate would be another one if I can sneak a second guy in there.
Yeah, I love it. I am excited to sit down and play around with his film and just see where, like, because I know the opening opportunity you mentioned earlier playing with Victor is huge. Jalen Slauson, 34 on my board right now, and that's not
There you go.
much. So, and it probably hasn't moved very much. Okay. Every guest gets this opportunity, and also want you to plug at the end as well. So, NBA title pick: who comes out of the East, who comes out of the West, who wins it, and then your tournament pick for college.
Man, I'm gonna be a lame-o and go Boston out of the East. They've kind of like
literally every guest this year has gone Boston. I
mean,
swear.
that's the smart money. I mean, they are just that good. They're defending champs. They are defending Eastern Conference champs, and you could argue that they've been better this year. And other teams that look like they were going to contend with them have gotten worse. Out of the West, I'll say Denver. I think it's Denver's time to come out of the West this year.
Yes. Thank you.
I know smart money is against them, but I don't know. I just think that it's their time this season. I just think that they have the best player in the NBA right now, and they have improved in a lot of areas. And some of the young guys like Christian Brown have stepped up and helped them out a lot. So it's hard not to go Phoenix either, though, with the moves that they've made. Phoenix is going to be scary, but it's hard first year bringing everyone together to compete for a title. So I'm gonna say Denver, and then I'm gonna say Boston wins. I'm gonna say Boston beats Denver.
That's exactly what I have. It's not changing. Not going to keep going on that. And then the NCAA tournament. I have Houston right now. Who do you have winning?
Winning it all. Ooh,
Yes.
man, I just watched Baylor Kansas coming into this game.
That was nuts.
I know I've picked Kansas with Caleb, and I don't know if I'm gonna waver too much from that. I'm still gonna rock with Kansas.
All right. I love it. Thank you, first of all, for coming on. Thank you for talking all of this lovely stuff with me with the draft. You're, as always, like I've told you, you're always welcome here. Talking about Jett Howard today and this or that. Thank you for having an open mind with some of that stuff, because it's stuff you don't normally think about. It's like, okay, why would I not take the lifetime passes, right? Thank you. Go ahead and get the plugs in for me. Everything will be linked in the description below for you as well. Let people know where they can find your work.
Well, Trevor, first off, just thank you so much for having me, man. Like, you're true class act, respect you and the rest of the guys. And, just I love everything that you guys are doing. And again, I appreciate anybody who's got passion in the game. So just y'all keep doing what y'all are doing. But again, if you want to follow me, I'm most active on Twitter at Stephen G. Hoops. You can read all of my written work over at NoCeilingsNBA.com. On the podcast front, we recently just announced that we got picked up by Blue Wire. So
Congrats.
The No Ceilings NBA podcast feed.
Congrats.
Thank you so much. Recently just got picked up by Blue Wire. We are the only and official NBA draft podcast on their entire network. So that's a big deal. So if you want to go follow us, like, share, subscribe, rate, and review, all of that really helps us out a lot. And just kind of stay tuned, because if you're listening to this, I'm either about to or I already have seen Missouri play against Georgia. I'm going to be going up to Athens to watch that game. And then in early March, like I said, I'm going to go down to Orlando to check out UCF versus ECU. And I like Brandon Johnson too, by the way, out of ECU. I have him in my top 100.
I love it. I'm going to get to watch him against Houston 7 days. Well, the day this goes out, for people who are going to hear it, I'm going to be on the way to East Carolina to watch that game when they hear this. So, or it will have already happened. So a lot of really fun stuff for you guys. I'm super excited to see. Congrats on Blue Wires. Obviously, you guys have got a lot of great things coming. I know you had a big meeting today, so I'm excited to hear what transpires from that. A mock goes out
big stuff coming.
Big board mocks. I mean, just things that are rattling off the shelves. So once again, thank you. I look forward to working with you again. If anybody wants to check out anything with Stephen, it'll all be linked in the description below, as well as all the stuff that you can find for his work, the writing, the podcast, everything with Draft Fever. All of that will be linked in the description below. I'll do my really quick outro. Stephen and I can get out of here. But thank you guys for listening. Don't forget to click the link in the description below. Excuse me. To download SeatGeek, you get $20 off your first purchase with code 2pointers. Everything will be linked in the description below. Like, comment, subscribe. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you later.